In this episode, we speak to Boudene Hauraki, one of our colleagues from the Centre for Multicultural Youth. We speak about intersectionality and what it means to be an Indigenous person of Aotearoa and a gay man, where Bo reveals publicly for the first time. We also dive into topics like meditation, finding home, and what our superpower is as well. So please join us and listen in. Cheers. Look, thanking you for joining us on the OKIRU podcast today. And it's a Sunday, it's raining outside, and you know where you'd rather be. Sometimes just lying on the bed doing nothing.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, we thank you for all your support of the podcast to date, and really keen to dive into your story to understand who you are and the man you are today, Bo. And we've worked for the last few years at CMY together, so we've developed a really close working relationship, right? A lot of respect between the two of us. And look, I'm just glad that we could have this platform to share your story, to maybe capture a point in time of where your life is now. And maybe, who knows, 20 years from the future, you look back and you can have a snapshot of history as well. So before we begin, and I'd like to invite yourself and the listeners at home to join me for the meditation. Our starts have been a moment in mindfulness to allow us to center and ground ourselves, but then to open up our hearts as well. We go through this society really focused in the brain and in the mind, and it's very easy to get into that hustle mentality of just doing more and more and more, right? And I find very rarely that you do take a moment to stop and then to listen to your heart. So inviting you to come into a comfortable seat, and when you're ready, gently closing down the eyes as well. Recognizing where you are in this point in time. Feeling the foundations supporting you in where you're seated or where you're standing. Feeling the ground underneath your feet. Feeling the seat underneath your bottom. And feeling your backrest supporting your spine in that seating posture. A beautiful anchor point of meditation is your breath. Your breath is a key to understanding your feelings and emotions at the time. And let's take a short moment to find and place your awareness into your breath. Is your breath short and shallow? Or is it full and deep? Feeling the different dimensions of the breath as well. Feeling the inhale through the nose as it puffs up your chest and fills your lungs. And on the exhale, feeling the release, the expulsion of impurities that your body doesn't want. And through the inhale, feeling your life force, the universal life force, entering your body. And then on the exhale, shedding away all anxieties, all ill feelings. Meditation is an art, but also a science. The art of it is accepting any thoughts that may come up in your mind, because they do, and you can't stop them. So there is an element of acceptance, of watching passively with neutrality and ease. And just letting your thoughts float away and fly away, just like clouds. So as we're sitting here, observing our breath and placing our awareness on the life force that's been given us, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're meeting and where you may be listening on. The Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who have been the custodians of this land for time immemorial. For as long as history can remember. Their connection to this land is so special. And I want to honor that here today. So when you're ready, and wherever you are, just slowly dropping out of your meditation in any way that you want. You might keep your eyes downcast at the floor and at your feet while you gently open up the eyes. You may want to, just rub the pads of your fingers together and just feeling that sensory sensation of touch as you remind yourself that you're human and living in this human experience. So when you're ready, and I'm open for any feedback from yourself, Bo, as you sit here across the room from me as well on the practice and maybe your journey through mindfulness and whatever that means to you as well.
Yeah. Wow. What a powerful way to start this, this conversation. Yeah. It's funny because I've been trying to get myself into meditation. It's not something that I've, traditionally done. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to do that for myself and using YouTube and, the things that are already out there.
Yeah, of course.
But that just hits, that hits different. Just being there in person, hearing, going through that. It's definitely, and I think too, having that connection of being right next to you and hearing your voice, just adds that little element of specialness. Thank you. That was amazing. There's a couple of things that were going through my mind as we were going through that as well. And one thing is thinking about my own sort of consciousness and my own thoughts, and recognizing when I was going away and I'm like, you're speaking, but my thoughts were going somewhere else. I'm like, hang on, bring it back. So that was interesting just to recognize that. And then the other thing was, I don't know, there's something about bowing your head. And for me, I recognized as well that I'm sort of, I don't know if it's a cultural thing as well, because in Māori culture, where I'm from in Aotearoa, when we pray and we do, it's probably a religious thing as well, is you bow your head. You put your head down, and you don't, even when you're speaking to someone, it's not common for us to look into each other's eyes in our culture as well. Right. So that just being, aware that like as soon as you started speaking, boom, I went down, so,
it's fascinating. In Asian culture, bowing is a sign of respect and of deep respect as well. And I was in a yoga class yesterday with Anzari, who we recorded yesterday with her, and she's a close friend of mine. And after class, as she closed her practice, I don't think anybody else did that, but just gently with my eyes closed, hands together, it was just a bow of thank you and respect and honor as well. So we definitely do that in our culture, and I think it's so beautiful to maybe it puts you in a state of vulnerability, doesn't it, when you bow your head?
Yeah.
Because your eyes are down, it's not looking at whoever else it is. And maybe in our primitive days, as you bow down, like you're putting yourself in danger because your eyes aren't activated anymore.
Yeah. I think another thing too, that as you were talking and how you incorporated the acknowledgement to country into the meditation process, I think also I felt that, and that because I think you go through a process as well, and I've been through my own process of acknowledging the traditional owners and what those words actually mean, and being in this space, being in a meditative, I don't know what you would call it, but a state of meditation, and then going through an acknowledgement of country, it becomes more real for you, or real for me, and I actually am listening to your words and what that actually means. So yeah, it's good.
Well, we appreciate the words even much more so as we're wiping away all other thoughts. And we're not wiping away all other thoughts, but what we're doing is being conscious and being focused on the present moment, which is what meditation is all about. And I do see that because of where we are in society and because of the recognition that we want to give our First Nations people, is that an acknowledgement is true and correct, but sometimes it is, and it can be the thing that you must say before you go on to say your other things, right? So I've been lucky enough to sit in an acknowledgement of country training as well with a group called Acknowledge That. And they're based in Perth and from Noongar country. And incredible young artists and speakers who I really encourage everybody to sign up, because it really changes how you approach an acknowledgement to country as well, and to feel comfort in making the acknowledgement your own and what it means to you, and rather reading out a script and then saying, all right, moving on to the next thing, right? Because it is important in what we do. So I'm fascinated to understand your Māori culture and heritage as well, and what it really means to you, because you're a close friend of Tyson's, and we had him as a guest on our podcast
Mr.
as well. Tuala, Tice. He's a great dude, right? And what we were inspired by was his connection to culture was so spiritual, was so sacred. And I can see the markings on your body as well with your tattoos. And from what you've said, it's a piece of you. It's your story that's branded on you as well. So I'd love to hear it wherever you want to start and wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, nice. I think when I think of me and who I am and my journey as Bo starts hundreds of years ago, when my tupuna, my ancestors, first travelled to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Yeah. And thinking about that and the journey that they had to take from travelling from Hauraki to Aotearoa, and what they had to overcome to do that, and travelling through the seas and navigating the oceans and all the elements that are involved in that to be able to get to New Zealand, to Aotearoa. I'm thankful for that, so I acknowledge them. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, for my ancestors and my tupuna. So that's where my journey starts. It was way back then, which brings me to the person I am now. I am a Māori man, proud Māori man. My roots are grounded in where I'm from, and you probably would have heard this from Tyson as well. And funnily enough, we are from the same area. I think he did mention that in his story. Very closely, we're literally like 2 valleys over. So I'm from a little place called Omanaya in the Hokianga, which is the north of the North Island in New Zealand. Beautiful tropical area of New Zealand, very isolated and very tight-knit. So that's where my roots are grounded. And saying that, I didn't grow up there, which I think is a part of the story of being Māori and the effects of colonization as well. Okay. So I grew up in another little place called Murupara, which is about 7 hours from where I'm actually from. And we moved there because of work. My parents had to make money, and so that's where we went. And so I grew up in a little place called Murupara. When I got to high school age, we moved because my parents recognized that. They're like, oh, hang on, our kids think they're from down here, let's take them back home. So we went all the way back up north, just before high school for me. So I did high school up in a place called Whangarei, which is probably the city centre of the north of where we're from. So that's sort of my journey in life, and being able to grow up in those small knit community villages also is why I'm who I am. I'm a village man. I'm a community man. I come from a long line of social workers. My mother's a social worker. My sister's a social worker. My dad's recently, in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, has gone into that space as well. So that it's ingrained in me. Community's ingrained in me. Growing up with that village mentality is ingrained in me, and it's like that. It's a story of most Māori in New Zealand as well. So that's really important to me. So when I think about that as well, I'm from a place called Omanaya, and when I think of my home and where I'm from, we have a really deep connection to the land and the sea and community as well, quite like other Indigenous cultures across the world. So I can tell you my mountain, my river, my ocean, the waka, the boat that my ancestors sailed over to New Zealand from. I can tell you all of that, and I can tell you where they are.
Yeah.
And that's part of my identity as well, and my story. So, yeah.
What do you mean? You can tell me about where the waka and the boat and the mountain. What is your mountain? Tell me about your mountain.
Yeah, so I have, I'm from quite a few different spaces in New Zealand. If I'm looking at sort of my genealogy, my line of my mother's and my father's side, but I'll just go with my father's side, which I know the best. And so we've got two mountain. We call them maunga, and they're Pukehua and Pukehaua. Which sits at the back of our marae. If you ever Google Omanaya, you'll see the little marae, which is our hub, our building. That's where all our ceremonies take place. Yeah. Right behind it are two massive mountains. Those are my mountains that I identify to.
Right.
And then we've got the marae is called Te Piti, and then we've got a river that snakes around it, which is called the Omanaya River. And then part of being who we are is each tribe, each iwi has a waka that they're associated to, and that waka is the one that we came from Hauraki.
Yeah.
And my waka is called Ngā Tuki Mata Whāroa. Rua is two in Māori, so it's a double hull waka. If you've ever seen a traditional waka, sort of like a canoe.
Yeah.
It's a double hull canoe. And it currently sits in a place called Waitangi, which you might also hear the Treaty of Waitangi, which is the document that we have in New Zealand. My waka sits on the treaty grounds.
Wow.
And this massive, beautiful, if you're not from there, you have to pay to go see it. But if you're from there, you can go and see it.
Yeah.
So those are my, what draws me to my identity. That's who I am, is those landmarks.
And you go back to the story of when your ancestors traveled here from Hauraki. Where is that place now in the modern day context?
Yeah. Good question. Probably the question that we all ask ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think if you ask any Māori where Hauraki is, they probably can't tell you, and I actually can't tell you where it is.
Yeah.
But essentially, if you put it into Western contexts or religious contexts, it's sort of like the promised land where we came from. Some people say it's Hawaii. But also I think there are stories of migration of the Pacific Islands that come from sort of Southeast Asia as well. So there's all sorts of different things. So Hauraki is just that place that we came from.
Yeah.
And if you look at the journey of the Pacific Islands, they came from somewhere and then they went through all the islands, Tahiti, Samoa, Tonga, the Cook Islands, and you'll see the similarities in our cultural practices as well. And the last stop was Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we were the last ones to get off the waka. And so that's sort of like the short answer. I don't know where Hauraki is, but it's there.
It's so beautiful because it's a mystery that your people, your ancestors all live with now. But the mystery informs you as a person and your different connections to the region as well. And it's so romantic hearing that you've got a mountain and you've got a river and that you identify on such a spirit connection with as well. And I remember in the past you telling me about just your connection to land, water and air as well. And do you want to tell me what your different connections are and what that means to you then? Yeah.
And I think when I think of that, for myself, I'm still on my journey of figuring out what that is. And I think it makes it harder not being there. And it actually sort of makes me a little bit angry. Like, man, why did I have to leave? But that's another story. But I think, I'm still on a journey of finding myself and that identity and that connection to my land. But I'm also grateful for what I have learned. I've been surrounded by some incredible people in my years of doing community work back in New Zealand in Aotearoa, as well as sort of growing up in that environment of cultural identity. My parents were quite staunch in their Māoritanga or Māoriness as well. So having the language at times spoken in the home was really helpful. But also even just that, recognizing that, hang on, you're not from here, we're going to take you home. And then we're like, oh, we thought this was home. But actually our home's up there, and it's like sparks. It's like, oh, okay, we're going home now. Like, we have to learn where we're from. So to sort of answer the question, I think I'm still on that journey. But what I have learned is that we are incredible, strong people. And that gives me strength in anywhere. I can go anywhere in the world if I know that. If I know I'm Māori and I know where I can go home to, and that's my home. Like I've always got a place in the world, and if I need to go back, I'll go back. And one day when I need to be buried 6 feet under, I'm going back there. So just I think knowing that gives you power. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I know that's where I can go.
That's incredible, because you speak to, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and that connection to home is different for everybody, right? But I guess as an Indigenous person to that land, that connection to that land, it's so deep-seated in your body, in your veins, in your whole being, that's where you want to go back to, all right? And I ask this question a lot, what does home mean to you? And on the podcast and throughout life, and some people are forever nomads as well because of the opportunity that they've been given to access cheap flights and jumping on a plane and going to another location and migrating, forever migrating as well. So with your village mentality and with your sense of community spirit, how is that translated into your work today? Because when you're doing community work, you give a lot as well. And I'm finding that a lot of the work is unsung, it's unrecognized, and you go through the ups and downs of giving to others. So I guess for me, meditation helps me ground and helps me find me back into my element so that I could recharge and then go out to give more. So how do you find settling into your ground? Do you have any practices that you have that you can charge yourself up with?
Yeah, I think, and before I get into that, I think there's one thing that I just want to recognize as well is when I speak about that connection to my land and my country and my home, I want to also recognize my privilege in that, and that I understand that there's a lot of people across the world and here in Melbourne, even people back home in New Zealand, Aotearoa, that don't have that, and that, I think I'm in a position of privilege when I can say that that's my home, where others I think may not, or home could be different to other people. It may not be their traditional home. They could make home somewhere else. So I just wanted to recognize that as well. I think it's really important. In terms of how do I recharge myself, I think, and it all links back to my culture. Whānau, which is family, is important to me. It's who I am. That's before anything else. I'm an uncle, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a grandson. So my family are what ground me. Even though I'm like on the other side of the Tasman Ocean, they're there, and they're always there. So if I ever need to be pulled up on anything, my mum's on the phone or someone's on the phone, pulling me up. So having that and having my family around me, and that doesn't need to be blood as well. We have whānau is like a term. It's a term that it's sort of like a broad term that you can, like, you're my whānau, like, you could be friends, but you become family. So having that and the village that I've been able to create for myself here in Nam is super important. I think that's what helps me. Another thing as well, and relates back to my culture, is song. Song, we call it kapaka. So I'm part of a cultural group. I'm wearing a t-shirt at the moment, which is Ngā Mātai Purua, which you had Tyson on last time, and he's heavily involved in this. And I'm a performer for Ngā Mātai Purua, which is a Melbourne-based cultural group. And that as well helps me to ground myself, helps me, and I do that. I don't need to be performing to do that. I don't need to be in any space. I can do it at home in the shower. I can do it anywhere. And that tells a story. The songs that we sing, the mōtiatia, the chants, the prayers that we do, that we perform, have story and meanings. And I can sing or I can chant in whatever situation I am in to ground myself. I guess as I'm talking, I'm like, that's quite similar to meditation, right? You can do it anywhere and everywhere.
Absolutely.
And it helps to ground you. And that's my meditation, is being able to just sit there and sing or to chant. That helps me to ground myself.
So the thing with meditation is that most people think it's sitting in silence and focusing your breath and going monk mode or something like that, right? But meditation could be any form where you find effortless effort, I think. So you could be drawing or sketching. You could be out there running. You could be boxing, for instance. Any activity that takes you out of the mind and into the body, for me, that's a meditation. You could be riding dirt bikes or something like that. Or you could be surfing. Surfing's a great meditation for a lot of people because you're out there in the water, you're trying to catch a wave, but you're also trying not to drown at the same time. So you can't have your mind wasted on other thoughts other than staying on your board, catching the wave, and then being safe the whole time as well. But one of the other things that I wanted to speak to you about, and I saw on TV today a debutant in the NRL, I think it was, and I think he played a great first game. And at the end of the game, he went into the crowd and he performed a haka. So traditionally, and before last week, I thought it was a war cry, right? That's my conception of it growing up here in Melbourne, in Australia. That's what I thought it was, a war cry before when the All Blacks play or something like that, right? That was my knowledge. But when I saw this footage, he was performing the haka, but then in the crowd, others were performing back to him and scattered around there. And I find that just an incredible power of respect, a gesture of such power and respect. But I'd love to hear from you what was actually happening there when he was standing there and performing it after his game and people were performing back to him. What does that all mean?
That's an incredible sign of respect. And that's how we show love and appreciation and respect for, we perform haka at weddings, at funerals, at pretty much every ceremonial, thing that we do, we would perform haka. It's a way of, showing that you love them, and that respect that you have for them, that deep respect. And it's really, when I perform haka, there's this like energy that you have. It's like you finish, you're like, you just left it there. You're like, yeah, this is me, take it, So I think for that particular situation, it was a sign of love and respect, it's an incredible thing to have, and I think when I think about haka as well, I think what a unique way of showing that. No one else in the world does it. No one else. And so when you see a haka, Aotearoa New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing to have as well. for the person that's performing it. You know, this is me, this is who I am. Boom.
Yeah, but it's so infectious as well, because everybody and anybody can join in, right? It just depends on their feeling at the time as well. And I've seen footage of in New Zealand schools where it's just a hall full of young men performing the haka out of respect to the principal. I think that video was at the time. And yeah, it's just so powerful. So incredible to cultivate this as a practice from your culture as well. Must make you feel incredibly proud as well then too, hey?
Yeah, 100%. It does.
But we talk about intersectionality in diversity these days as well. So we're here talking about your cultural diversity, which forms a big part of yourself, but another part of yourself through, I would think, a lot of self-discovery and a lot of courage to also come out as a gay Māori man as well. How's that been as a journey for yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, you know, I'm very proud of that as well. I think just to start, I think I am, my coming out journey is something that I think is quite different, I think, to most gay people that I've heard and that I've had the privilege to hear their story.
Yeah.
And my story is quite simple. I came out at a later age, around 27.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a big hurrah announcement type thing. It was just, you know, I got a partner and that was it. You know, I just fell in love.
Yeah.
And I think before that, there was definitely, and as I reflect on my life, I know that there was some suppressing of feelings and thoughts that I know a lot of Māori or just men have, but more so in the Māori context, we come from strong masculine energy, and that, if you look at it in a traditional sense, it doesn't align with being, or not traditional, it's more looking at the context of gay culture, it doesn't align, you know. So I think for me, that I struggled with. I struggled in silence, which like most Māori men do and continue to do. But coming, I think, just relating that back in and reflecting back as well to the people that I had around me at the time made it easy. And again, I acknowledge my privilege in that I know it's not easy for a lot of other gay men that go on that journey of self-discovery, and that they may not have, a lot of the time, they don't have the people or the support around them to be able to do that. So, I acknowledge that as well. And I'm always having conversations with people, especially my partner, around, you know, my journey and relating it back to his, and like, it's so different. And hearing what others have gone through high school, and, you know, the bullying and the,
I'm sure,
you know, it's, I never experienced any of that. Because I don't present as your typical gay male. So I never had to go through that struggle. Which, I acknowledge that, and, you know, I'm quite privileged that I didn't have to go through that. But also makes me sad that when I speak to others that they did, and I think I have a role to play in that. And this is a big thing for me, actually, Liam. I've never actually spoken publicly about this because it's not something that I feel like I need to. But the more I think about it, and the more I thought about having this conversation, I think, well, actually I do. In the spaces that I am in, and the privilege that I hold, is that I actually do have an obligation, I feel, to share my story, and to offer support. And I do through my work and through all of that, I do. But I think just going back to that whole thing, it wasn't a big thing for me. And my parents, nothing happened.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing, actually. And my dad's a minister in a church.
Oh, wow.
So, and it wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and it's quite my father's relationship, and he won't mind me saying this. Me and my father, we've interesting relationship, but a loving relationship.
Yeah.
And we never actually spoke about it when I did come out. But there was a moment where I went home and I took my partner home over the last couple of years. And as I was leaving, he just grabbed me and hugged me and told me he loved me. Wow. And just that was all I needed. And that was his way of saying, "It's all good, son. I love you."
Yeah.
Without, because he's like a manly man, he doesn't like talking about feelings and all of that. So
for sure.
Being able to just have that and feel that and hear the words was like, cool. That's what I needed. So I didn't even need it, but that's him saying, "You're all good, son. I love you.
You're all good," and you can move past it. I guess not that you needed to move past it, but the acknowledgement is so powerful.
Yeah.
As well, because also having a father who is quite stoic is that you don't get much out of them. But when you do, it is so meaningful as well. So I'm curious on how you'll use this awareness of your intersectionality, of being an Indigenous man, being a proud gay man, to inform the work that you do in the future as well. But now, because now reflecting back, but also looking forward, is that you say you've got an obligation. How will you support your communities in the work that you do?
Yeah.
Through, I guess, reflection and having the awareness and telling your story because of your lived experience, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't realize before working with CMY was that lived experience matters.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when I relate that to like the work that I do, well, currently the work that I do around providing space for young people to be able to share their story, to share their lived experience and give it value, I think that in itself is sort of like a way for me to take young people that might be struggling with their identity on their own journey of self-discovery by simply just providing that space for them to do that, which I think we don't provide enough of in society. So there's like, and for myself, looking at like, what's the future look like for my career or thing, this stuff it's not a job to me. I don't see it as work.
Yeah.
But I think just living my life and my journey, my lived experience, that's it right there. And that's, I'm just thankful that I get paid to do it, but I'm not gonna change or fit into a box to tick a box so that I provide the space. I literally just need to live my life and live it in a way that is truthful, that it goes with love. And if I do that, then it opens doors for others to do the same. And that's, I think, just my like one thing that I'm always going for. And so I don't really have a plan. I'm not like thinking, I'm going to set up a center for, LGBTQI. I'm not about that. I'm all about whatever. It's just responding to the need whenever I feel it and whenever it resonates with me.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is a new journey for me to even speak about it.
Yeah.
So now I need to use that and look at, okay, so how am I going to provide that space for others to do the same?
But it's in your own time, right? It's whenever you feel comfortable to be able to do so. And look, doing community work, you, as I mentioned before, you give up a piece of yourself out there in service. So that recharging is always important. And I feel honored and thankful that you're able to come out and share this publicly on this platform as well. So we've dived through your sense of community with your Māori people here in Melbourne, Victoria. What are the challenges that your community are facing at the moment? Because there are some new laws now that grant citizenship and fast tracks through that process for your people, right? What's happening in your community, and anything you can share in that regard?
Yeah, look, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think for us as a people to be able to, and I think it's like reciprocal as well, because Australian citizens can go to New Zealand and get all the rights and the privileges that New Zealanders have, but we can't do it here.
Yeah.
And I get it, there's probably more of us coming over here than there are going over there. But I think too, for Māori and New Zealanders living in Melbourne, Australia, is it really recognizes to the contribution that we have to society.
Yeah.
So there's, I don't know the exact changes in the law, but I know there's a lot. Even just the pathway to citizenship is like pretty powerful for us, because there's a lot of us that haven't been able to do that have been here for 5+ years and still not able to go for citizenship. So I think there's going to be some massive impacts for our community living here, because I know there's been some massive barriers around accessing supports and whether it's financial support or healthcare and all of that kind of stuff that we need to just live everyday lives, and we've been here for forever. So just recognizing that is good as well.
How did your family come to Australia?
So my family is not actually here. I came here by myself.
Yeah, right.
My family are all back in Aotearoa. 5 years ago, I decided that I needed a change. One thing about me is I don't like comfortability. As soon as I start getting comfortable, and you'll see if well, my family probably laughing at this, but if you look at my life, there's a pattern that goes on. Like I go into something and then I'm there for a bit and I get bored, and then I'll change it up and go somewhere else. And be there for a little bit and then I'll change it up. So about 5 years ago, I was sort of like in my job. It was the same old thing. I felt like I was hitting roofs. I couldn't progress more than I was. And the only sort of option that I felt at the time was to just leave whangare. I had been to Melbourne before that. And I think I came to Melbourne when I was like 20 for a few months and absolutely fell in love. And I was like, I'm going to come back. It took me 7 years, but I came back. So I just decided professionally and personally I needed to get out of the environment that I was in. I felt a bit stuck. And it was one of the best decisions I think I made. And this isn't the end of my journey. I think there's something else coming. I don't know what that is yet, but there's something coming. And it's not, I think too, one of the important things that I need to tell myself is that where I am right now is like, I'm in a pretty powerful place, professionally and personally. I think I've made progress in the last 5 years, and I have my whole life. And that's thanks to Australia and coming to this beautiful country. And I recognize that it is a beautiful country. And the opportunities that I've been able to have, the organization that I work for, and everything that I've sort of been able, all the opportunities. And I'm one of those people, I just grab onto everything and anything I can. So that's why I'm here.
So how was your experience in landing here? Moving to a whole new country, new city, not new, completely new city, but finding your roots, establishing your roots and developing a sense of community. And it would have helped working with, did you work with CNY from the very start as well?
No, I jumped in a couple of, and this whole thing around change for me at the time, I actually came to Melbourne. I had, just to give context as well, I have worked in community work for over 10 years since I was sort of like 18, 19. And at the time I was like, all right, I'm done with it. I'm leaving whangarei and leaving New Zealand. I'm going overseas, and I wasn't going to go into community work.
Yeah.
That was a big joke because I got here and I worked in a factory in Hallam.
Yeah.
Making carpet something. I don't even remember what it was. It was like some machine, big machines I was painting and stuff. Lasted about 6 weeks. I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Went to, came back onto the west side and started working at Melton City Council.
Right.
Started developing some of their school holiday programs.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, sort of that's my experience. It was an easy job to get.
Yeah.
And then while I was there for maybe 6 months, and then this job at CMY came up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was, if I go back to sort of my journey and my settlement here in Nam, it wasn't easy. I think what makes it easy is I had family here. Mm-hmm. And I had friends from high school here, so I had that sort of connection to home, which I need. I need always now. I need that connection to home somehow. Two, what makes it easy for me, and what made it easy for me to come here was that it's literally it's literally just like not far. It's like a 3-hour flight back home. If I needed to, I can just go home. So those things made it easy, but also the struggle of finding work, of finding that connection that I need, and creating my village. I'll say, like, in the 5 years, it's only in the last year that I've really felt comfortable with the people that I have around me. And finding that village has probably only happened in the last year. So it took me a good 4 years to actually go through that. I had to settle here and find a house and go through the processes of work and do I actually want to be here, and all of that. So it wasn't until like the last year or so that I've actually been able to find my village. And
so that you've done all the work to find your village, and now it's time to go now because you're getting too comfortable.
So that's why my family will be laughing, because they're like, "Oh, look, he's off again." I don't know what this next path or journey will take me, whether it's another country or if it's just a change in my environment where I am now. I just feel like, and it's not that I'm not comfortable, because I am being challenged in the spaces that I am in currently. But there's something that's missing for me, and I think it might be the stage of my life. Maybe I might be having a midlife crisis. I am 32. Is that midlife?
Maybe. It depends on how long you plan to live for, I think.
Yeah, true.
But I'm the same way as you. I get a bit comfortable, and then I'm like, hang on a second. Maybe it's our need for seeking novelty as well. And it could be the generation that we live in as well, where if you look at generations prior to us, they've had to stick around because their options were a lot smaller, and that if you wanted to succeed, you had limited, I guess, pathways to do what you needed to do. But with the power of the internet in switching careers and being able to start again, and being able to do so with little risk as well, because I guess you may have built yourself a safety net in other ways, or you have family, right? You are afforded that comfortability as well. So maybe something to reflect on for the both of us as well. Yeah. And the last thing I want to hear about is your time working in youth justice as well, because it wouldn't have been easy, would it? Working with, I guess, young people who are somewhat lost and get placed and stuck in systems where they may not normally be able to succeed. So do you have any stories and your work and experiences from there?
Yeah, it's, I feel, just as you're talking, I felt like a little bit like a sadness when I think about it, because I do think about the hundreds of young people that I've come across in my career, and the journey and the struggles that they go through in a system that doesn't fit them. And I reflect mostly on the work that I've done in New Zealand, working with my own people. And yeah, it's heartbreaking that our young people continue to feel and experience the effects of colonization in a system that is not built for them. And I think it's always up to us, for generations coming, for me, for the next generation, and for my mother's generation, to be able to build and break down those barriers that past generations have felt. And so there's a bit of that. My work in the youth justice space has been a colourful one, to put it lightly. I've come across some stories and some, as well, incredible young people that still stay in contact with me. I've worked with, and they're flourishing in life. Some may not be. They might be, in prison and things like that. But I always hope that whenever I come across a young person, that I can say something or do something that could potentially, I think this is something that we need to think about in all areas of our lives, is that when we come in contact with someone, and I do it in my work in that space, is that as long as I can say something or do something for a young person that may potentially change their trajectory in life. Because the statistics show us that when a young person gets into that system, that it's highly likely that they're going to be staying in that system for a long time. So if we can catch that something early in a young person's life and try to just change that one course, that person's life will change forever. And there's some success stories and there's some not successful stories that I've had. Trying to think of like a specific young person, obviously without sharing any details. But there was a young person that I was working with, and he was, in my reflections, very misunderstood. He was a young Māori man that was disconnected from his identity. He didn't know where he was from. Didn't know his family. He was whāngaid, which is a term sort of like adopted out to other families. He was in the system, passed from people to people. And I came across him when he was, he was at a young age. I was thinking he was at high school, 15. And he was bad. They, the Prime Minister knew about him at the time. And they had him in his own home, 24-hour care. And I was doing the night shifts with him. And we built a really strong relationship. I worked with him for 2 years, and I was also his youth worker during the day. So I would take him out on activities and try to instill some sort of, I guess, positive things in his life, because he didn't have a lot of that. And this boy was clever. Like, he knew the system, because he grew up in the system. So he could tell you all the laws and like tell him his rights around, all that whole thing. So I was grateful to be able to work with him for a couple of years, and we grew a really strong relationship. And he went on to, through all of the work that we done, and we connected him back to his, because we found his family, which wasn't too far from where I'm from. It's like another few valleys over. And so we connected him with his whānau, with his family, and we went through a whole big journey, and we found where his mountain was. I took him out. I've actually got photos of this, actually. It's just remembering. I took him for a walk up his maunga, up his mountain. And having that power and being able to tell him stories, we found a an old person, sort of like a rangatira, or an elder of his family, and we went to go sit with them, just speak about his family. So that connection gave him power, and he went on to I actually caught up with him. He messages me now and then, still stay in touch, which is really nice. And he's currently working on the boats, and he's starting a family, and it's like that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
But when I think about that, it's because of those little things that we did, and that's what I say around. As long as I can do something or say something to a young person that can change the course of their life. And I think it was literally with him, it was just showing him who he is and his family, and it was taking him up as maunga, was going to go sit with an old person that knows his family. And I think, I'm not saying that the credit's all to me for doing that, but he being able to just provide that space for him, I think helped that change that journey in his life.
It must be really fulfilling to be able to impact another life in helping that young man at the time find himself and restore, I guess, confidence in his being and his connection to the world around him as well. So what would you say your superpowers are?
Oh, my superpower. I think my superpower is... Oh, hang on, this is a hard one.
For me, superpower is something that you can do with ease. And for me, it might be something that people comment on you about frequently as well. And I shared this right before we started the podcast, and people say that I have such a grounding and a calm voice. And to couple this with a meditative practice as well it just aligns so well. And I think I recognize that this could be my superpower. I don't know, but maybe it is. And okay, let's establish it. At this point, it's my superpower.
Nice.
So what I see about you is you're such a friendly giant. You're always so open, and you've approached work and in all our interactions as community first, right? And especially yesterday when you share the keys for the venue, right? And you forgot to put it in your mailbox. And then I sent our friend Kanu out. And then you're just like, all right, just go into my house, go into my room. It's in my laptop bag. Look for that, grab the keys, and you're out, right? And that's such a community.
My house is always open, but I'm not going to give you the address. I'm not going to put the address on it. But literally, my house is always open. And I always tell people that come to my house, to my home, that my door is literally always open. So I guess that's my superpower.
Yeah.
It's just connection and community, finding commonalities and resonating my story with people.
Yeah.
I think is, and I think when I think of that too, it's like, that's all that people want. They just want to share themselves, share their stories.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why I do what I do currently, is because young people, that's all they want to do is just share their story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think connection and community, probably one of my superpowers, being able to connect community.
And you're right, definitely is your superpower. And look, when we wrap up these podcasts, we like to share 3 questions, and as a moment of reflection on, I guess, your life, your past experiences. And look, I'll share them with you now. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my family. I think I'm always grateful for my family. Yeah, they're pretty incredible people. And I sometimes wish they were here and they can see, or that people can experience the power that my family, my people have. And I'm very grateful for them.
And what have you realized?
I've realized that life is not always easy, that we fail and failure is okay.
Yeah.
Just got to ride the boat.
Yeah.
And I think I've come to realize that in the last sort of few years is that we get battles, we fight battles, we hit barriers, we fail on certain things. It's all good. Just keep going. I think realizing that gives you power to just keep going.
Yeah. Incredible. And what is a question that you ask yourself?
You all right? Are you really all right? No. I think normalizing asking yourself if you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes you're not okay. And I've been in situations where I'm not okay and I don't say anything because, you need to, as a community person, you need to go out there and you need to be this bright, positive person and you're doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to just go away and ask yourself, are you all good? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good if you're not. Just deal with it.
Okay. I think I'll go home and ask myself that question later then. But it's just been so incredible to sit down and just have this open conversation with you today. I guess the culmination of all our work over the years as well, and a beautiful connection that we've established as well. So where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, so I don't even think I mentioned this, but I work for the Centre for Multicultural Youth, CMY, which is one of the biggest multicultural organisations that work with young people from migrant refugee backgrounds in Australia. So I've been there for 5 years now, so you just call anyone at CMY and they'll name me. So just call the hotline at CMY, you'll get me. So yeah, I'm there. I'm also part of Ngā Mātai Pūrua, which is a kapaka group. You can Facebook or Instagram, NMP, or you can just LinkedIn me, Boudene Hauraki.
Yeah, beautiful. So thank you all for listening today. I hope you found this discussion valuable and see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Liam.
Cheers.